When have you been genuinely scared for your life? I lived on an artificial heart for 11 months. It was battery driven and at night I had to plug everything into the wall. The terror was real. I had a thick cord exiting my abdomen attached to a computer that controlled the pump inside my body. The computer failed on me twice and I had to swap it out myself. When the computer unplugs, you have no blood flow. I had to experience this twice. Then I had a heart transplant. That was far less terrifying than the artificial heart. So you're a real life Iron Man. Nah. I can't go out. I gotta charge my heart. When my oncologist stopped saying the growth and started calling it the cancer and followed up with now I'm gonna have to figure out how to save your life. Fortunately for me, he figured it out. On a tour in some mountains in Scotland. Very nice guy driving me up a mountain. It's icy as F. All going well until the car swivels out of control and starts to pendulum towards a tree. Genuinely though it was it. Somehow the driver stops and we just about miss the tree. Crashing into a ditch. He asks me not to mention it to his boss. I tell him to drive on. Almost crashed in a helicopter. When the pilot started to freak out. That's when I knew we were in trouble. Just a silly anecdote. But I travel a lot for work. I'm well used to all the bumps, thuds, whines, groans, and shimmies a plane will make during the course of a flight. I'm usually immediately asleep as soon as I sit down. Occasionally I get seated next to a nervous flyer. And my go-to method is, look, I fly a lot. If you don't see me nervous, you have nothing to worry about. One time I was sound asleep, having a nightmare next to one of these nervous flyers. I bolted awake and said, shh, that poor guy nearly died thinking the plane was about to crash lol. My friend and I were eating burgers in a darkly lit area on a street in Seattle when a man walked straight up to us with his hands in his pockets. Gesturing like he had a gun, he says, "Give me your money." I immediately pretended to be drunk and got all chummy with him and said if I had money that would be amazing, and the guy looked around and then walked off. No idea if that was smart or incredibly stupid. But I definitely realized in that moment that when your mind is in fight or flight you have little control over what your brain is going to do. You think I'd be eating burgers in an alleyway if I had money? Ha. It was incredibly smart. When confronted by a random attacker like this, acting in the most unpredictable way is a very reliable way of diffusing the situation. Caught in a tornado. Out-iced. No cover. Just laid down in the mud and prayed. Trees fell all around me but I managed to stay put and none landed on me. It was nuts. Was going to market. Gave a thumbs up to a dude in a nice car. And he pulled a pistol on me. I was maybe 12. Nice. Christ, was thumbs up some foreign gang sign. Had a massive asthma attack. As a paramedic myself. When your colleague looks you in the eye. As he's sticking deafened patches to your chest L. And radios for a true cardiac arrest backup. You know it's not good. Especially seeing as they can't use medical jargon around me as I already know it. So I know what a silent chest means. You are not moving any air. I know what it means when the nebulizers haven't worked and they start giving adrenaline. I know what the deafened patches mean and I know none of it's good. I remember passing out really slowly. And as I closed my eyes I genuinely thought I was going to die and I'd never open them again. To come around in the ICU later in with the same colleague by my side was the best feeling. He saved my life undoubtedly. Come in. Dispatch. We have a patient with Island Sayer State Che and are starting F day. You had that asthma attack in the best possible place. Only thing that would have been better is if you'd been in a hospital. Aged 8 or 9. I went on a field trip to a water park. The main attraction was the wave pool. And it was severely overcrowded. When the bigger waves came in, I went under and about 5 others people landed on top of me, effectively pinning me underwater. A lifeguard saw it, luckily, and saved me. But holy F, I'll never forget that sensation of helplessness as I drowned. It is amazing to me there are not more deaths than there are in wave pools. They are so crowded and the constant motion makes it so difficult to actually see into the water. I spent 2 summers as a lifeguard at a small town beach on a lake and a few years later went to a water park. I couldn't be around the wave pool at all because I couldn't stop myself from watching and panicking that I couldn't get a count and thinking I had lost track of a weak swimmer. It gave me so much anxiety I had to leave. I was doing field mapping for a company I will not mention in the middle of nowhere, Central Texas. This was during one of the hottest summers on record and miserable outside would have been giving it a compliment. It was hell on earth. Alright. So I was doing my field work on an ATV and mapping rural electric utilities as the terrain was extremely rough and unforgiving. ATVs were the only way to do your work effectively. This day in particular was excessively hot, 111°F, with no wind. I'm a bigger guy and not afraid of too much, but I had the creepiest feeling looking at this dirt driveway that stretched around a mile on some redneck looking land that had rusted cars, etc. I get to the top of a hill on the property and spot my asset to map about a quarter mile away that was surrounded by dilapidated trailer homes. I drive my ATV close to what appeared to be a compound and dismount. I immediately felt uncomfortable as there were literally 20-30 beer cans surrounding the property. They were using this as a makeshift security system so intruders would make tons of noise. We had a letter from the sheriff and the company stating we could be there to map the utilities, so I said my name, company name, purpose, and went about my business. I then followed the electric lines around through their backyard and waded through the beer cans to reach the asset so I could map the unit. I look over and there is a clearing in the beer cans with a chair. I take a close look and see piles and piles of animal bones. The crazy FS that lived at this place were eating whatever type of animal they could get their hands on and leaving the scraps to rot in their backyard. I then get the most uneasy you're being watched and possibly cannibalized feeling I've ever felt. I then turned my head and immediately locked eyes with an eyeball in the broken Venetian blinds behind a window in one of the trailer houses. We both paused. Stared. Then the blinds closed. This all took place in about 2 seconds. I then ran like hell. Hopped on my ATV. Said F safety and drove like someone in a Honda Motorsports advertisement. I escaped the compound. Mind everyone. I had a old lady point a shotgun at me on a separate occasion and was bitten by a copperhead, but that compound was easily more terrifying than that. I quit shortly afterward and so did most people on my team. Effing around on people's property in the middle of nowhere Texas is a suicide mission even if you have the law's permission. When I was at an outdoor range with a few friends and one guy a few people down had a misfire in his 7mm Magnum. He pulled the trigger. No bang. He then turns around. Muzzle sweeps everyone to his right, including me, and the guy behind him grabbed the gun. Pointed it down at the dirt in front of Mr. Dumbus. And the round went off. No one got hurt. But me and a few other people sat down to take a break after that. And Mr. Dumbus was promptly escorted off the range by a, rightfully so, pissed off RO. Misfires are always nerve-wracking. And I've always been taught to hold it on target for 30 seconds before attempting to clear it. And always leave the muzzle pointed down range when you do. And Mr. Dumbus and his 7mm Magnum that had a slow burn or something really drove that point home. We were at a gun range with a friend. For the first time ever, but before going he grilled us about gun safety and the do's and don'ts. We had a Rems. Dumbus beside us that boasted about having been there millions of times. She took a shot and missed the target with her 9mm Glock. Turned around undignified to look at her friends. Finger still on the trigger. Stopped and muzzle pointed straight at my husband. Guy behind her was quick to lower her arm and point the muzzle down. She too got escorted out. We were new there, but damn, we had some damn common sense. When I graduated from gallbladder attacks to gallbladder hell, when I would get them before, it would be horrendous, exhausting and nauseous pain for about 12 hours. Eventually they started lasting a month. I got so sick one month that I lost 50 pounds and had to live with my parents because I couldn't look after myself and I was scared I was going to die. Couldn't get a doctor to listen to me. Took 2 years to get my surgery. Surgeon said they couldn't even see it to start with, even though it was quite enlarged as it was completely covered in adhesions. Apparently if you are getting gallbladder attacks, it already needs to come out, so don't ignore it. When I was about 11 years old, I was home alone one day over the summer enjoying a bag of Skittles and watching TV. I tossed a bunch of them into my mouth and made them into a sort of ball, which I enjoyed to do. Then something made me laugh and I ended up swallowing it. The ball wasn't huge, but it was big enough to get stuck in my throat and causing me to be unable to breathe. It was terrifying because nobody was home to help me and I started to panic. I remembered some cartoon or TV show where a character was choking and slammed their stomach into a chair to get it to pop out. So I started throwing myself into the side of this recliner we had, and even though I probably wasn't doing it completely right, it actually worked and the Skittle ball popped out. It was still one of the most terrifying minutes of my life because I thought I was going to die and very well could have. Now I'm a lot more careful whenever I'm eating something and I'm alone. Cartoons are educational. When my mother told me to do chores and I held them off until the moment I hear the garage door opening. Same goes for thawing the chicken. When I was a Boy Scout, we were backpacking in the Eagle Cap Wilderness area of eastern Oregon. We tried to make it up Glacier Pass, but the trail was completely snowed out still in July. We turned around and stopped at the first meadow we found to eat some lunch. About 15 minutes go by and our scoutmaster very calmly tells us to stand up and put our backpacks on because we needed to leave. I look in the direction the scoutmaster is looking and there is a very large cougar staring at us from across a shallow creek. We started down the trail and I looked back towards the cougar to see if it had moved. That damn cat was crossing the creek and following us. We kept moving and kept looking back to see it occasionally. The cougar followed us for about 3 miles before we lost track of it. That night, we had a decent sized campfire and me and 2 of the other older boys sat up most of the night watching out for it. The next morning, we found a freshly dead animal about 100 yards from our camp. Cougar was just being a bro and giving you all food. I was 17. Wanted to take a dimmer from an old light above my bed. Was sure I had unplugged it. Hadn't. I cut the wire for the lamp and saw an incredibly powerful spark. Everything was white. The breaker for the 2nd floor went off, so when I regained vision everything was black. I thought for sure I was dead. Cutting live wires with 220 vac. Luckily the wire cutters had rubber grips. The wire cutter were broken afterwards though. The edge had melted together from the electricity. Literally 3 days ago I woke up in the middle of the night to see a face in my room. Someone had climbed through the window and I just happened to wake up before they had a chance to do whatever they were planning to do. Was at work while in uni and got this chest pain that would not go away. It was like something was pinching me and I had already been having right leg hip pain, so once I left work I slept it off. Woke up that night. Could barely walk and was in tears the whole night wondering if something was going on. I was an idiot and should have gone to the hospital. Still not sure what it was, but a friend said that it could have been either a panic attack or a mini heart attack. Recently got my heart checked and I'm okay. But at the time it was terrifying to think I might die while I was hours away from my family. Definitely go to the hospital if that happens again. I was 12 and went to Disney World with my sister and parents for Christmas. We went in mid-December, and surprisingly it wasn't overly busy for the holiday yet. We were on the safari ride, and they have this one part where you drive over a bridge. Little did I know, this bridge is designed to simulate a collapse. As we drove over, the driver said this bridge needed repair. Then boom, the thing starts titling while the huge truck is on it. I thought for sure I was about to die. I was thinking a million thoughts a second from the rush. Then after like 4 or 5 seconds the bridge repairs itself and the expedition continues while the driver giggles at the kid who screamed for his life and silently cried for the rest of the ride. Besides that, it was dope seeing all the animals though. I was home alone and up the stairs from the kitchen. Naturally, a few plates and stuff decided to fall from besides the sink, and I was scared shitless. Managed to move after 5 minutes, only to realize I was still home alone. Thankfully, I hate when that kind of stuff happens when you're home alone. You think all is good and then boom, some random stuff falls and you have no idea where it came from or why it's happening. You just think you're about to die. Years ago I went to Portugal with my family, and at the time I couldn't swim yet kept doing stupid stuff in the water like going out too far, and had done stuff like that for years even though my parents constantly told me off for it. So one day we all go to the pool and I had a beach ball with me, so I hugged tight around it and went down the ladder right into the deep end of the pool. Pretty much right away I knew that I'd effed up and meekly tried calling for help, but no one heard, so I attempted to paddle back to the ladder, but as I did the ball I had slipped out of my arms lol. Pretty much right away I went under and started struggling and panicking. I was screaming in the water and frantically trying to get up, but like I said, I couldn't swim. After what seemed like forever but was probably only like 10 seconds I felt an arm grab me and pull me out, and sure enough it was my dad. He was laughing at me but also calling me an idiot lol. It turned out he'd been watching me like a hawk the very second I went into the deep end, but wanted me to learn a lesson the hard way, so when I went under he took his time getting to me. It worked though, as I don't do stupid things like that now. Just to add about my parents' method of raising me, I was a very ignorant and fearless child who'd often disobey my parents, so more times than not they'd have to take drastic action to make me see sense. My sisters never went through the kind of stuff I did, but that's cause they were responsible enough to listen. Without my parents letting me find out stuff in a controlled environment the hard way, I'd either be dead or in prison lol.